Hello and welcome to part 8 on our video series building a TypeScript and Postgres API. In the last video we set up our Docker Compose file so that we can stand up a local database and begin working with it. In this video what we're going to do is take a look at how we define the data models that we want to work with within our project. So we're going to be working with two in particular, that is author and book. So those are the two models that we're going to be defining. And we're also going to look at how we can get those models pushed into our database so that they actually sit there as entities that we can work with in the future. If you do want to follow along with me, there is a link in the video description to the repo that we're using, and you can head over there, and what you can do is just pull down the part 8 branch, and you'll be exactly as we are in front of us here, and you can follow along with me. So first things first, we're going to chat about the library and the tooling that we're going to use to manage our database, and that is actually going to be a set of tooling called Prisma. Prisma is both a JavaScript or TypeScript library that you can use to interact with your database, but it also comes with a set of tools to actually help you get set up with your get your database initialized via a set of command line interface tools. So what we're actually going to do is we're actually going to start off by initializing our Prisma project using npx prisma init. And what this will do, this will actually initialize our Prisma project by adding in a schema.prisma file here, and it will also add in a database URL into your .env file so that you can connect up to your database locally. Depending on the version of Prisma that you're working on, you may need to go in here and just update your username, password, and database. Oh, I can actually see there's a bit of a typo there. Postgres. There we go. And what that'll be used for, so you notice I've got this database URL. We've also got a reference to an env variable database URL. This is the database URL that Prisma will use when it interacts with our database. So this schema.prisma file is essentially where we're going to start declaring the models that we want to work with. And those are author and book. Now, an author can be an author for multiple books, and a book can have an author and a bunch of other fields as well. And what we're actually going to want to do is just start out by declaring what our entities should look like in our database. So we know that each entity should have an ID, an author should have a name, and that should be a string. An author should have a set of books, and those are going to be book with these square braces here, which essentially say it's going to be an array of books. And some helpers as well. We're going to have a created at and an updated at. These are both very common fields for databases to have so that you can use them for understanding when your data was created and updated, essentially. And both of these are going to be date times. Postgres and Prisma come with some really helpful functions to define our data models as well. So, for example, every ID within a database should be unique. So we can do that by, well, we actually say that this field is going to be our ID field. And what we want to do is actually provide a default unique field for whenever an author is created. So we'll do at default, and then we'll use queued, which is essentially a unique identifier for any database entry. Name is perfectly fine to be a string. It doesn't need to be unique. Same with books. Created at, so it's a date, time, and that is essentially a string representation of the date and time that the entity was created. And we want that to have a default of now. and updated at, they're actually quite a unique field within Postgres and within Prisma, so we can actually provide this updated at helper, which will essentially automatically update every single time this entity is interacted with and updated. Now we can begin fleshing out our book model as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to add on our created at and updated at. We're going to add on our ID. A book should have a name. A book should have a genre. And a book should have an author ID, which should be a string as well. And that author ID is essentially what kind of connects up these two entities. So we can reference the author from a book by knowing what its author ID is. What we're going to do is we're now going to just tidy up our file a little bit. So we'll just do npx prisma format, and that's essentially going to, ooh, what have we got here? Attribute not known at updated at. Have I typed that wrong? At updated at. Oh yes, I've missed there we are. So let's run that again. Excellent. Now the format is going to do a couple of things for us. It's going to nicely indent all of our bits here. What it's also going to do is attempt to create any missing references that we haven't crafted by hand, which is really useful for some of these kind of related fields. So for example, on author, we've got books, and we know the books is going to be an array of books. We also need on a book a reference to an author as well. So this has created this author reference for us, and I'll talk you through what this means. So it's got a relation helper which says this author is related to this to an author by a field of author ID that exists on our book, and it references the ID, which is the ID of the author. What we're also going to do while we're here is we're going to add a new helper function called onDeleteCascade. And what that means is essentially if for some reason the author that is related to this book is deleted, then this book should also be deleted because as you can see at the moment, a book cannot exist without an author. So it's just a nice tidy way of maintaining relations within your database and making sure that they don't ever lose their relations. So what we're going to do is we'll just do a quick npx prisma format just to make sure that's all tidied up. And what we're also going to do is run an npx prisma validate just to ensure that our schema is actually valid. And if there are any issues, it'll kind of throw those up as part of either the validation or the formatting process. Now, this is all well and good. We've got our models defined, but they don't currently exist in our database. So we can see we're connected up to our Postgres database, we're in the public schema, but there's nothing there. So what we need to do next before we wrap up is essentially push our model into our database so that it's available for us to work with. And we can do that by doing npx prisma db push, and assuming you have your Docker Compose up and running and that you have your env file with the correct username, password, database, and schema, we should then be able to run this command and it will push our database models, into our database. So here we go. So it's pushing the schema, and what it's also doing, and this is something that we'll work with in the next video, is it's creating as a JavaScript client for us to work with as well. So it's now the database is now in sync. When we head over and do a quick refresh, we'll notice that we now have two entities now within our database, an author and a book, and we can start having a look at indexes, we can start looking at references, relations, foreign key constraints. So you'll notice that a book has to have an author ID that's foreign keyed onto an author, and that's how references are kind of created and managed between entities within Postgres. So we'll wrap the video up there. In the next video, what we'll do is we'll take a look at the Prisma client, which will be used to interact with our database entities, and we'll start looking at how we can create an author or a book. It'll probably be an author to begin with, because that way we can just start off with the simplest piece. I hope the video has been helpful, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.